Hey, welcome back, Simon. As I mentioned in our previous podcast, I've never done this before. So you have just come out with a book. My understanding is today, so you'll have to talk about that. But where I said, okay, I'll implement some of the things you did. So you've got like 83 things in your book. I went after 22 of them. And we'll talk about my successes and failures there. But talk about your book launch and anything new you want to add since our last conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Win Fast is launched today. So it's out on the market today. And I'm really excited. As you can imagine, it's an enormous amount of work to get a book like that out. But I'll tell you what I'm also excited about. I'm excited that you have actually done the exercises, because the world's full of people who read books and don't do a thing. And you've really, really put yourself out here and actually experimented with the technique. So I'll be fascinated to see how you went.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I went after 22 and I knew I was stretching. So I just figured, whatever, these sound interesting. I threw 3 in the background. Let's see, what were those 3? So just so the audience knows, anybody who's watching instead of just listening, when I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at my list. So there were future ones of having a weekly admin day, 2 hours every Friday morning you recommend. I'm going to wait on that because I kind of clip through it as I go during the week. Not fully necessary yet,
Sure.
but I like
Makes
the
sense.
concept. The next one was become a master of thank you notes, send one a week. And I just thought, I really like that. I've tried to do it before, but I'm going to wait because I already got 22 other things I'm trying to do in your program.
Yeah, I understand, man.
The other one was I wanted to try the fish oil you recommended, but I wanted to wait. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to wait on that. I got a full plate right now. So those are 3 that kind of intrigued me. There were others, of course, in the 83 or whatever the number is in the book. But I would like to make an overall comment so that you may find interesting. In trying to follow this process, and particularly some of them, as I'm sure you'll notice when we go through, I found that I created much more intense pressure on myself to do the steps that I wanted to do and achieve certain results. So that was very interesting.
Yeah. And what Win Fast is about is, there's about, as you say, about 80 techniques, and they're all things that you can do relatively quickly to improve how much you achieve in life. But what I believe the best way of doing a book like that is to grab a handful of the ones that really work for you, and then turn it into a daily checklist. So when you get up, you're trying to do that checklist as well as do your day. And yes, it increases pressure a little bit, but I think it's positive pressure because it's trying to raise the bar of who we are as humans and how we're performing as humans. And inevitably raising the bar leads to pressure.
Yes. And what I found was that when I really felt the pressure was intense, I was just like, oh, okay, well, this is happening because I've made some changes. So let's just adjust a little bit. Doesn't mean I'm throttling back, but let's just adjust a little bit. And it worked out fine. So let me walk through these, dive in anytime to ask me questions, question anything, whatever. But so one of the big things was following a morning ritual that you had put in there. So I have that ritual. So I have some dictums I say, which are statements I say that are positive, powerful statements. So I go through that. I also recently implemented something with my family where we have 7 statements about the family where it's, we never do this, we always do this. And so I read those out loud each morning after my dictum. So doing those both out loud has really added some clarity there. And that's helped, it helps me focus in on the person I want to be.
Wow. I think that's absolutely fantastic. The whole area of, as you say, dictums or affirmations or focusing statements, I like to call them as well. Although people have heard about that, very few people do it. And it's enormously helpful, not just to make us perform better, but to improve our moods. I've always found I do similar focusing statements in the morning. It takes, 2 minutes to do or so, but it really does recalibrate the mind from sometimes you wake up and you really don't know what kind of mood you should be in. You're kind of deciding what mood you should be in, and it gets you in a good mood. It gets you focused on the good stuff and on the best part of yourself. So it's such a simple technique, but I'm so glad you're doing it, because I really think it's great. And I'll tell you something else. Many of the great Olympic athletes run their training using similar statements, and they've found it's incredibly successful.
Yeah. So doing that, I do. I'm trying to, when I'm getting up on time, I'm exercising in the morning. So that's nice. I do some Bible study and prayer and some memory verse type thing, which is helpful for me too. I have, for the first time in my life, started to listen to 15 minutes of Baroque music every day. And
Wow.
I actually enjoy it. It's I use it kind of as a background. Sometimes I use it when I'm doing the Bible study. More often I'll do it as I start to work on a particular writing project or something for a client or whatever. I like it in the background at a low volume, sometimes a little bit more, but usually low volume. I like it. It's kind of peaceful. It's almost like I'm in my own coffee
Yeah.
shop.
Yeah, I look, coffee shop in 1621,
Yeah.
and look, it's fabulous. Sheila Ostrander and her sister Nancy have done enormous research on Baroque music, and for the listeners, that's music of a 4/4 time beat, and a lot of the classical Mozart music is like that. And what they've shown is that the brain functions better when we listen to Baroque. It's got a certain vibration and a rhythm that helps us remember. It helps us think better. And we've all played music tracks that have lifted us up mentally. Well, Baroque music will wake up your brain and get you feeling great mentally every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've enjoyed that. So that was the first set there that tied to the morning ritual. The next thing was you made the point of do your most important task first. Great advice. So one of the most important things I did, now I'm going to jump ahead on one of these. And we had a good conversation about this in our podcast, was that I really liked your concept that at the end of each day, list 3 things you did right or you feel good about or were accomplishments, and only one thing that you want to correct or could have done better. And I've done that regularly. I really like that. That's
Yeah.
been, it's also, I talked about the stress. I felt more stress occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
a stress reliever because it's a check-in.
Mm-hmm.
I am getting something done. I can feel good about it. Well, then that leads to this getting your most important task first. I have something I teach called sanctuary concept, where you basically take a moment each day and kind of zero in on, okay, you follow what I call a map agenda. You walk through, okay, how did I do yesterday? What were my metrics? What did I want to get done? You go to, okay, what are the adjustments? What's going on present day? And okay, that gives me my plan for the first day. An interesting thing was, for the first time in decades, I went back to handwriting a to-do list or a little
Wow.
checklist. So I have a line down the middle of the paper, and I have some family stuff over here, and I have business stuff over here, and I compartmentalize them. So I write some
Nice.
horizontal lines, and I've actually found I really enjoy that,
Mm,
because then
mm.
also I can, if I'm doing it right, if there's a couple left, I can transfer to the next day. But either way, usually at the end of each day, I'm crumpling it up and I'm throwing it out. It's like, yeah, I got that done. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's an interesting little process.
Well, look, look. I think there's 2 great things about it. The first is that we're being conscious about what we do, rather than just playing every day again and again and again the same in a semi-conscious or unconscious way. We can and people do lose years of their life unconsciously getting up every morning and just doing the similar things. But what has always amazed me, and why I love that technique, and why in the Windfast book I make such a big deal of it, is that if you look at all the elite military units, they review what they do at the end of every mission. If you look at any elite sports team, they review what they do at the end of every game. But it's absolutely ridiculous that we in business or in life, mostly, I know you do, but most humans have no review structure at all.
Oh, yeah.
And how can you possibly improve if you're not analyzing your performance? And as you say, the way that's I suggest in WinFast to do the review is to emphasize the positive, because I think as ambitious people, a lot of us are beating ourselves up about the one thing that day that we didn't do well, rather than remind us of all the good things that we did. So it's beautifully balanced. It works really well. And one trick with it is the next morning to read it once more, to remind yourself, yeah, I did some good stuff yesterday, but also I'm not going to make that same mistake that I made yesterday. I might have treated that person poorly or whatever. It brings you back to that. And it's front and center in your mind that you're not going to do it again.
Yeah. So I really like that review process. It's worked very well, and then leads to more effective sanctuary time where I'm kind of working that out. And then the other thing you said was spend the first 2 hours of each day on what's most important. So pretty consistently, I've spent an hour or two really just setting things aside and doing the writing that I need to do to advance some projects that I've got going on. So if I don't do it in the morning, it doesn't get done.
Yeah.
And so one of the correction items that's been there a couple of times is I didn't do any writing time, because
Yeah.
I got caught up
Yeah.
with clients in the morning or whatever it might be. And then I didn't get the writing time, and it never comes back in the afternoon.
Yeah, yeah, and look, it is a tough one, because sometimes our morning motivation isn't that strong. We're just getting started, the coffee hasn't kicked in, all that kind of stuff. And then other times, you're confronted. What is most important is not necessarily what you want to do, and so it definitely takes discipline. But the concept in WinFast is what I call a 2-hour day. So you pretend you've only got 2 hours in the day as soon as you start work. And that by the end of those 2 hours, you could literally walk out of your office, go home, or in a COVID environment, go into the next room. And you could honestly say to yourself, you know what, I've moved things forward. And if you can do that in the first 2 hours, that not only leads to greater productivity, but it leads to more satisfaction, because you've kicked a big goal in the first the first few minutes of the first few hours of the day, and you feel good for the rest of the day.
Yeah. And I think you made a good point. Really the goal is to feel that you're moving things forward each day versus, you can list too many things on what you want to get done in a day and then beat yourself up for the 8 things you didn't get done, but they shouldn't have been on the list in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to be more
It,
realistic. So,
well, you raise a terrific point there. I think one of the best productivity techniques, and frankly, I don't think I put it in the WinFast book, is always look for things to delete off your list.
yeah.
And that's not just delegate. That's a common technique, and that is a good technique. But literally say, do I really need to do this? And there's an English time management expert that puts that as one of his key techniques. He's constantly deleting things off his list unless they absolutely have to be done. And I think it's a great technique.
Yeah. And, Steve Jobs was great with that with Joni Ives, his head designer, he always asked him, what have you said no to? And
Wow.
Ives later made a comment that early on in those discussions, he'd say, I said no to this, no to that. And then I don't know, at some point Ives realized, wait a minute, I would have said no to those things anyway. I don't like those. So what he realized is if he truly wanted to do awesome products, he had to say no to some projects that he really wanted to do. They were cool,
Yeah.
but he had to stay focused on one because that had to get everything he had. And that's still a struggle for me, but okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Same.
next, you talked about use a timer all day long with certain tasks, and then you set a time, and then you try to, I've got an hour for this, but I'm going to set it for 20% less, try to beat it. I've done that a little bit. Haven't done it maybe as much as I should. It works, of course, better with writing versus cutting a client short by 20%. but I like that one. And it does, the thing I really liked was it raises my awareness of the time I'm spending.
mm, mm,
So that piece was
mm.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, for the folks listening and watching, really, it's about using, you know, usually your phone timer and setting times all the way through the day that you work, as you say, and it increases energy as well. You know, particularly for people working at home. Or working by themselves for a long time, you can slow down a lot, I find. And the great thing about this is you don't slow down when you got a timer. You just keep the energy up, you keep the rhythm up, you keep moving fast, and you don't always hit the, you know, do everything by the timer, but it definitely increases your speed and your momentum.
Yeah. Okay. You recommended to read your goals 3 times a day. So I updated and streamlined some of my targets. And I started out by glancing at it 3 times a day. For me, it added a little too much pressure, but I was more consistent of looking at them once a day, which
Mm.
I do like. And I do think that has a lot of power. So that piece was helpful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, can I ask you this? Why did you feel pressure when you read your goals? Is it because you felt, wow, I there's still a lot I haven't done?
Well, that's part of it. But the other part is that I'm very conscious of my goals.
Mhm.
So I don't necessarily need to have them in front of me 3 times a day. I know, you know, since I'm planning my day and then working that plan, then I know what I'm trying to get through and achieve for each goal and how I'm trying, you know, the ones that apply that day and get
Yeah.
that done. So
Yeah.
it really
Okay.
was, but I could see how it'd be helpful for some people. It only takes a moment. I mean, it doesn't take that long.
Well, absolutely. And you know, you're you know, and what you've achieved in your career is a testament to it. You're an unusual person. The typical person is sets goals and then forgets about them.
Yep.
And there lies all the problem, because they start doing things all day that aren't connected to their goals. So it can make a big difference to read them often, that's for sure.
Yeah. Next one I went for, you said block out daily thinking time. So what I did was I kind of transposed that where I'm trying to read 30 minutes a day. So I've got regular reading
Mhm.
time because a lot of times the reading time doesn't happen. So that's helped me
Yeah.
get some more
Yeah.
reading done.
Well, that's a great thing. You know, I do find that if you just and people could potentially try it. If you just set a 10-minute time during the day with a blank piece of paper to do thinking on a particular subject, for me that helps me enormously, and it doesn't take up much time. But it's amazing how many ideas you can come up with in 10 minutes when you're feeling motivated.
Oh, I agree. And even the clarity you can get from 10 minutes of quiet,
Mm, mm,
you know,
for
turn off the
sure.
phone or put it face down and don't have email in front of you or whatever. And 10 minutes of quiet and just that's, you know, I can see that. And I have been doing that piece. So I have been
Yeah,
doing that
beautiful.
more where daily I'm trying to take, and that 10-minute span is a good span since reading your book. Maybe it's from the book, but I didn't have it listed, but I am trying to do that more where I'm just trying to take some 5 or 10 minute break during the day where I'm not looking at any screens. I'm just kind of thinking through things. Might be while I'm getting my coffee or whatever. I'm just like, okay, let's just keep it clear. I'm not going to listen to a talk right now. I'm not going to work on some
Yeah.
memory verse or whatever. I'm just going to let my brain just roll. It helps.
Mm.
Helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big
Sounds
one
good.
for big one for a lot of people. You said use the release breath to keep your stress low. You talked about the release breath, and I am trying to do that. I am not as successful with that as I would like, as
Yeah.
far as taking time and getting up to 10 breaths or more. I typically hit about 3 or 4, and then my brain goes down some rabbit trail, and I forget I'm trying to focus on my breathing. I
Yeah.
need to work on that one.
Yeah. Well, look, there's nothing wrong with that. 3 or 4 is not bad. If you do 3 or 4 breaths a day where you're consciously releasing the stress, like let it go, let it go, let it go. But I tell you, by 5 or 6 p.m., you are definitely going to be less stressed.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a biggie. I think that's
Mm.
a biggie. I mentioned the personal performance review, the 3 things you do right, one area to improve. I use OneNote to document that. Really helps. That works well. I am being more diligent most nights on, you said use sleep as a weapon. So trying to get to bed on time so I can start early, because when I start early, I have a much more productive day. I like to get up at 5. This morning, I think I got up at 5:45 because I just got to bed too late last night. So no exercise this morning, which is disappointing. But I was able to, be okay on my rhythm as far as work rhythm. But most nights I'm getting to bed on time and getting up on time, and it's much more productive.
Yeah,
So,
well, I think that's an incredible thing, not just for productivity, but I've found, I don't know if you have, that optimism increases. I have definitely correlated. I feel more optimistic about life if I have a correct amount of sleep versus an hour or two short.
oh, definitely agree. Definitely agree. Yeah, that makes a big difference. So, and of course, I think
Mm,
what plays into that too, and I don't know whether it's in your book, I can't remember everything that was in there, but I think to keep in mind, and this is an area where I need to work on too, look at what you're doing to relieve stress. So when you look at Michael
mm,
Phelps, the swimmer, what he did to his body to swim at that speed, he
mm.
also got 2 massages a day.
Wow,
Okay. So,
I did
you
not
know,
know that.
he
Wow.
was working, resting, a
Yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah.
And so whether it's massage, whether it's you like to do a yoga class, whether it's you like to work out, I used to swim with 3 buddies when I lived in another area. And it was just the most stress relieving thing to swim laps together. We're all trying to swim at a similar pace. We're older, but we're still competing, but it's clear who's the faster swimmer. But the little banter in between, the laps and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
or if you play basketball or golf or whatever it is, I think that's a big piece of then when you go to sleep, you're going to get better sleep because you've had
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that stress release.
Yeah, and whether whatever we choose, I think the thing for everybody to think is, what's my stress reliever that I can do each day that works for me, whatever works for you. But to not have one, that is just going to lead to a poorer quality life, and
Yeah.
obviously more stress, and probably a shorter life as well.
Yes. Yeah. I think statistics have proven that. So, you said make your mobile phone your coach. So it's kind of fun. I have set up. I have something that I believe America has 3 toxic common values today, and then I have come up with 3 alternatives. So I put my 3 alternatives as little messages that come up on my phone. The
Yeah,
first value comes up at 8 a.m., the next at noon, and the next at 4 p.m. And it's just a little reminder of, hey, I believe there's some good stuff ahead.
beautiful.
Then you said create a 3-person superhero. I'm going to ask that you talk about this one a little bit more because I haven't utilized this. I had fun figuring out who I would have, although it was tough to limit it to 3. But I put in Jesus, whether you're religious or not. I think he had a big
Mm,
impact, right?
sure, absolutely.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., very intelligent man, sharp, really went out there, and President Abraham Lincoln, who came in, put together a team of rivals as his cabinet. I mean, many of them hated him, had no respect for him, but he's like, hey, these are the right guys for the job. And very interesting leaders, but I haven't utilized it well. What would you
Yeah.
recommend?
Well, yeah, look, it's a kind of unusual mental technique. And the idea is that we pick 3 people that we really admire and whose skills would really help us. And then we just imagine during the day that we're like that person, or the combination of that person. And we try and be like that person. Now, there's several ways you can do it. You can just kind of do your best to behave a little about like those people. If you've read their biographies, if you know them, or if you, as you imagine them being, you just play that out, like a bit of an acting game of trying to bring their characters to life. Or the other way you can do it is you can write down 3 or 4 characteristics of each of those people that you admire. And then you start during the day, you're continuously coming back. Am I being this group of characteristics? Because if you're being this group of characteristics that reflect these individuals, then you're being a version of these 3 individuals, which becomes your 3-person superhero.
Interesting. I think I would consider after this podcast actually maybe making that list of the 3 characteristics for each of them. And then having that something I also review each morning after my dictums and my family standards type of thing.
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
that will put it in top of mind for me. That would be, okay,
Yeah.
that's helpful. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And it stems from, what I talk about several times in Windfast is, we are human becomings. We're not just human beings. We are becoming someone all the time. We are, it's like a river. The river, no river is the same twice. The water's always changing. Same with human beings. So we need to consciously choose who we're becoming. And that's just another technique for doing that.
Great point. Great point. You have lived by the 64-4 rule. So you basically want to double your time, spend more time on the most valuable things you're trying to get done, focus more. I've done that. That's worked pretty well. Done that well.
Yeah.
Fast 1 day a week. I bombed on this. I'm going to have to pick it up another time. So I didn't want to do, I just didn't want to commit to it yet. So I'll come back to that one. Dominate me. I'm only on number 5. I got 22 of these, so I better talk faster. To dominate meetings, which is really not my objective, but the whole concept of before I join any meeting, start thinking about questions before I get on, was your thing. And that's been very helpful. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of time, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and just think about who's in the meeting. How do they behave? How do they like to communicate? What are their objectives? Think of some things I can ask. Great leaders ask good questions. So that was really fun.
And to prepare those in advance is something not many people do. But the brilliant thing about questions is, first of all, they can really open up possibility. But second of all, you don't have to, it's a lot easier to ask smart questions than it is to come up with smart answers. And so the person who asks smart questions not only tends to take control of the meeting, this particular one is for corporate executives who are wanting to shine a little in a group environment. Not only does the person asking the questions take control, but the person who asks the questions is at no risk, because the questions, it's pretty safe to ask a smart question. The person at risk is the person who's got to answer them. So it's a really simple but foolproof technique to shine in meetings. Yeah.
And I find, of course, you have to watch your tone. You have to look at the intent of your questions. And I think you mentioned that in the book. You got to ask, you're not trying to do this to manipulate or play games, but very helpful. One thing for me that was very helpful was to follow the 80% good principle, because I tend to be a little bit OCD and want to get everything just perfect. So I'll go at it and at it and at it and at it. So that was very helpful, as saving some time and just saying, okay, I can work with it this way. I can move forward. That's been very productive.
Yeah. The reality is we're better getting 10 things done to 80% than getting 2 things done to 100%. And there'll always be stuff we have to do 100%, like, finance. But the truth is, most of us are wasting too much time on perfecting things that don't really matter.
Yeah. You said follow my 4-step productivity system. With a calendar on my full screen type of thing, and then limiting answering emails, looking at emails. And there were some other things, but those were the 2 I wrote down. Didn't really do the calendar. I tried it for a few days, didn't hit for me, but I have significantly cut back how long I have my email open each day. So I try to cut back, just turn it off. And that's been very helpful.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And look, the main thing is to have a productivity system. I suggest numerous productivity systems in the book, but no matter what people do, just have one. Because if you're attempting to follow a system, you become more conscious of productivity, and that alone will improve your productivity.
Yeah. Don't answer the phone 90% of the time. That was easy. So I took that one up. Get an accountability partner. That's easy. My fiance, no problem. Make your desk like the Sahara Desert. Get rid of all this stuff. I took that to heart. I love my desk now. And I really clear it. I protect it. I protect how much stuff's on it. I used to let stuff stack only in one pile primarily, but I just cleared stuff. It's been great. That's been really good.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very zen feeling to have an empty desk, and it definitely calms the mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So next one, put on someone else's head. So when you're thinking about something, that's really an important thing. And I try to emphasize that more than I have in the past. I think I've done it somewhat in the past, but sometimes people just don't understand each other. There's a tone, there's some words that are used. Sometimes they don't even understand each other until they can go away for a little bit of time and think about, why did that really upset me? Or, why was I thinking that way? And they realize, oh yeah, this is why. So putting on someone else's head, that's been helpful. That's been good.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's a weird technique, but it definitely works.
This next one, make your usual answer yes. I actually gave that to a client this morning. I didn't give you credit. Sorry about that. But but
No
he was
worries.
talking about something on how he was working with his team. And I said to him, I'm going to use the analogy of a politician, although too many politicians, none of us ever want to aspire to be. But you don't want to say no, you want to say yes. So you had this situation where you're like, no, we can't do that. Whereas basically you do agree with what they want to do. You just don't want to do it as fast. So instead
Mm,
say, yes, you're right. We should do that. Now let's work out the time frame and the steps we need to take so that we can do that. And
mm,
that's where you can get your detail in. You don't need to say no, say yes, and then help
yeah,
them define the time frame and the steps you want them to take, and then it'll work fine. So I think that's a good one.
yeah. And just relating to the Steve Jobs thing earlier about the importance of saying no to everything, what we're saying with that technique is not to just say yes to every project, but rather when you're wondering, should I do this or should I not in life, generally we regret the things that we don't do rather than the things we do. And that's as much about your personal life. Should I go to this party or not? Should I go sailing or go down to the park or not? If you're in doubt, then choose yes as a philosophy, and I think it enriches your life.
Yeah, and I think these next three, always look for the limiting factor, be your own motivational coach, know your perfect day. Really, those three kind of all tie back to that personal performance review that you're recommending at the end of each day. What three things did I get done that I like? What one thing would I do differently? All those kind of relate back, because I'm going to look at the limiting factor when I think of what I got done for today and
Mm,
where the improvement is. Um, Doing this process of the personal performance review and then the morning routine,
yeah.
okay, where I'm building myself up, is being my own motivational coach, and it defines my perfect day
Yes. Yeah.
because I've laid it out. I've laid out what I want to do, and then I'm holding myself accountable to it. So those all
Yeah.
kind of reinforced. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, it's a powerful toolbox used together. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So you had make the most of car travel. You talked about Kegels, some exercises, listening to teaching sermons, whatever it might be, considering goals, think about what I'm grateful for. I'm doing great on all those except the Kegels. I just forget because I'm
Yeah.
listening to something. Usually I'm listening to something. I'm listening to some teaching. And I
Yeah.
get into that and I'm thinking about that. And so the Kegels is where I need to improve because that would be good use of my time.
Yeah. I tend to do them at traffic lights. For some reason, I've now trained myself to think of them when I'm stopped at traffic lights. So
Oh, maybe I'll
it,
try that.
yeah, give it a
Yeah,
shot.
better. Ruthlessly unsubscribe. So that was a
Mm,
good timing with that encouragement. I have unsubscribed to, I don't know how many newsletters since I started this. So, and I'm not, and then the other thing is I'm not subscribing to new ones. I'm not getting tempted to the new ones like I used to. So that's been helpful.
yeah. Well, there's also, I forget the name of it, might be Unroll or something like that. But if you just Google unsubscribe app, there's some kind of software you can get on your computer, and it searches through all your subscriptions, puts them on one page, and you can just go dot 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 dot, dot and unsubscribe to a whole lot of them at once.
Oh,
And
cool.
that's a cool way to do it as well.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, all those newsletters that you're following that you can't be bothered unsubscribing to, but they irritate you each day. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
get rid of them fast.
Yeah, that's what I did. So, okay, I've got like 5 more here. So, clear your mind each evening. Once again, that goes back to that personal performance review. Just kind of in thinking about the next day, I may take some notes. That's done. That's great. You had create a set of 5 life rules. I mentioned our family standards, and the other things
Beautiful.
I'm doing in that morning routine kind of all reinforce that between my
Mm.
Bible study and the other things I might be doing. Magnify your fear of loss. This was a really interesting one because as kind of a type A, high D personality, that's where I've made mistakes in my earlier career, was not really accounting for what's the risk I'm taking in business, or when I'm thinking, yeah, you just got to persevere. I got to stick this one out, when it's really, no, you got to quit, because there are times when
Yeah.
you have to quit, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I learned that the hard way, unfortunately, 10, 20, no, well, 20, 30 years ago now, not 10
Yeah.
years ago. But so
Yeah. Well, so
that's a
what,
helpful one.
yeah. And it's helpful tactically. It's also helpful motivationally. Oftentimes where, particularly if you're a positive thinker, and I would put myself in that category, we often say, oh, everything's going to be all right, everything's going to be right. And it can lead to a little, in my case, it can lead to a little laziness with my goals. But with magnifying the fear of our loss, that just, it's a regular reminder that if you don't get this right, what's going to happen to your finances? What's going to happen to your family? What's going to happen to your self-esteem? And it's just a reminder of the seriousness by which we've got to work on some things. And some people need no reminder, but some of us need a regular kick to remind us that this is no joke. We got to get this right. We got to earn this money. We got to do this well. And magnifying the loss in our minds really helps to clarify and crystallize that.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. There's the flip side personality where they magnify the loss automatically. They're skeptics, they're
Mm.
concerned tremendously about risk. They need the opposite. They need to be able to see more of what's the potential. But for you and me, we need to be very much aware of the risks and limit those risks, because they're just going to waste our time and waste our resources. So good
Exactly.
point. You had judge yourself by your effort, not your results. And I think that once again reinforces going back to that personal performance review and the morning routine of planning. So you're really clear and focused on those results that you want to achieve each day, and they're realistic. They stretch you, but they're realistic, so that you're judging yourself based on that. It's, for instance, my fiance's in real estate. She's having her best year ever. And what she's focusing on, she has a point system that she uses, that she does certain activities, she gets certain points, and she tries to hit a certain number of points each day, which she's done consistently.
Wow.
And so she's not focused on the results, but the results are just happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's just not a sales thing. I think that relates to every type of career, that
Yeah.
if you can
Yeah.
set that in motion, it's very positive.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is a brilliant technique. Everybody should do. I think that's masterful. And also, uh, judging yourself on your effort, not just your results, is really all about how hard did you try today. So maybe you're better than everybody, and you can just kind of cruise and still get reasonable results. But in your own heart, you may say, well, I didn't try that hard today. Put full effort in is a timeless strategy to getting fabulous results over time. And a lot of people who are intelligent or have more aptitude than others or are more senior than others, so they just do a better job, have forgotten to just work hard to our capacity and not just, dial it in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And once again, I'd offer the flip side for an encouragement too. If your issue, another way to look at yourself is, how smart did I work today? I may have worked
Mm.
incredibly hard. I may have put 14 hours in, but did I, and that's what your book, Win Fast, is all about. How do you work smarter and manage your life smarter? Did I work smart enough, or did I work 14 hours and actually the real stuff that I needed to accomplish could have been done in 7?
Yeah,
So
you're so right.
depending on how you're
It's
wired,
a,
you know.
yeah, absolutely right. And it's a combo of those two that tends to work best.
Yeah, yeah. And usually somebody has a failing in one or the other. At least that's been my
Yeah,
experience. Um,
for sure.
and the last thing was just have a life purpose. So, I've gone through this, but it just kind of emphasized it, magnified it, focused it a little bit better. But, really, where do I want to be at the end of this crazy year? Where do I want to be in, 2 years, 5 years? And that was great. So, those were my 22 that I started on my first round in your book. So I wanted to say
Wow.
thanks
I
as I
mean,
report
I'm
in.
yeah. Well, I'm just knocked out that you did it. There's 80 techniques in Win Fast to achieve more. I never expected anyone to do 80, but even doing 22 is pretty darn good. So all kudos to you. That's awesome work.
Well, that's great. So in closing here, please remind the audience where they can learn more about your book or any of your other services, materials, whatever. So
Yeah, well, WinFast is just out, so you can get it wherever books are sold, online or offline. And I'm at simonreynolds.com, and that's two I's in Simon, simonreynolds.com. And any help you need with business executive coaching or high performance, I'm there for you.
fabulous. Well, thanks, Simon. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation and the encouragement. And we'll go out there and close this year strong.
Yeah, it was a delight. Thanks for having me on.